So much, Juliana and team. My name is Jaramogi Kalfan Adolfo Diambo, and I'm a member of the HTB Uganda Section, and I've been volunteering with HTB for the last 3 years in quite a number of positions with IEEE, with HTB Collaborative, with different societies. But for today's talk, I'll just restrict it to this particular project, which was a lighting center, Augustino Primary School. I've been a volunteer with HTB in quite a number of positions in a number of roles. So I think volunteering has become part of me, and it's kind of an addiction. And like I said, I'll just limit my talk now to this particular project, which was in the Kampala district, which is in southwestern Uganda. And the motivation for actually our project was not, lighting in itself, but this was a whole island community, which in the first place did not have access to any ICT services. Let's say you'll realize that just for maybe photocopying just 1 or 2 pages of paper was actually as more expensive as a plate of food, actually 2 plates. And the reason was that someone had to cross from the island, then to the mainland. And then even after reaching the mainland, the person had to get actually a second means to get to where they could actually do such simple works, maybe printing of paper or photocopying or such simple things. So let's go to next slide, Juliana. Okay, so having realized that such challenges were actually in existence in that particular part, in that area where we actually identified, we try to engage members of that local community, because initially what we were basically aiming at was just the lighting part of the project, because we had only identified just one particular school. And initially, our goal was, to light this school. But then we realized that the problems were, there was a much bigger problem of the general community. Whereas lighting was only affecting, a particular school, but then the problem of, lack of the ICT services, which were very expensive for that particular area. Like I said, someone having to, use 2 different means of transport just to get to an ICT center where they can just photocopy, a document. Like I said, eventually just photocopying 1 page of a document becoming more expensive than actually food. So what we actually did was, trying to engage members of this community, because we didn't want to have a scenario where we are willing to assist. But then we don't have maybe an individual, a particular location where we can actually station our system so that the community can actually utilize it, and then, stop, these long distances and wasting long hours just going to do such simple works. So that's how we actually zeroed down to this particular school. And we said, if we can light this school, then we can actually add, an extra service. We can add on a computer, we can, deliver a printer so that all members of the community can actually access, those services from one, location, instead of first having to cross the lake and then, spending more than 2 hours, just on simple things, just photocopying, and you're taking 2 hours because of the distance. So we said, let's have these services on this school. Let this school just be a one-stop center that will serve the entire island community. So we had to actually have the community members when we were planning, because we had to, engage them so they could actually let us know which place was easier for them to access. And, that's how they actually agreed with us that we can actually use this particular school, which we had intended to light, and then actually have the ICT services in that particular center, so the whole community can, access, the ICT services from there. So that is very key. If you're planning and budgeting, it is very important if the project leaders can actually meet the, the local members at the grassroots, because then you can easily understand, what the members are going through. You can appreciate their, their needs, and then that makes your, your planning very easy. So for this particular project, we try to engage as many stakeholders as possible. We had the school heads, And then because the project was now going to benefit, an entire island, so we had to actually engage the local leaders and actually some leaders, at the district level, so they could actually give us some approvals. So we brought all this on team, and then that was through the planning process. So once we had, engaged with all these stakeholders and members of the community, then actually that's when we sat down, and drafted our comprehensive project application. Next slide, Juliana. All right. Again, one thing we have to emphasize, to project leaders or people who have interest, in taking up these initiatives, is that whereas you might only focus on, implementing the project, it is one important thing, to make sure that the community is actually empowered, and they can actually, take on the project even after, your implementation stage is done. And so we prioritized that because, we didn't want to have this kind of scenario where we've done the installation, but then the beneficiaries are not able to actually maintain it or sustainably manage it. So if you can look in the graphics, we actually had, members of the community and actually staff members of that particular school actually participating, in this activity. And the advantage was we chose to do the installation on a day when actually the students were at school. And, we were surprised that actually that became like a day off for most of the teachers, because, they had not, most of them, to be honest, had not seen such systems in their place, whether the power system or even, ICT. And the problem was even that was, a cause for increased maybe school fees for these people, because if a school is spending more money, taking long hours to photocopy a material from distant places, that has to, reflect in how much money students are paying as school fees. So once the system now got closer, the excitement of the teachers themselves and then the stakeholders, that alone, made most of these teachers actually spend the entire day with us, while we were doing the installation. So in the picture, those are actually staff members who were with us, throughout the implementation stage. Next slide, Juliana. Okay, so just like I've said, if you can actually look again in the photos, in the extreme, on the extreme left, you can see that that was actually a classroom, and actually students were there on that day, though lessons actually did not happen, because the both students and the staff members were actually willing to look on as we installed, and they actually, were part of us in these activities. And the direct impact was because the other schools in the nearby islands were actually still charging, exorbitant fees, because of, this particular aspect of if a school wants to print examination scripts, there are a lot of costs incurred. So the only way to meet these costs is increasing, the school fees. So because this particular school now was actually willing to cut down those fees which students had been paying for printing services, so there was an immediate impact that the following term, actually the numbers of learners actually increased by more than 15%. And because of that increment, actually we got another call from another school in the same district, because they had seen what had happened at this particular school. So they had wanted us to have a similar kind of project implemented in their school as well. And actually that happened last year in December. So this was a project which benefited the school greatly. The numbers increased because the systems, services had increased at the school, and the school fees had been reduced because the school wasn't now spending more on the ICT services. And then the other schools actually wanting to borrow a leaf and have a similar kind of initiatives or projects in other schools in the district. So the project was, very well received by the community, and it's actually serving an entire island population. It's a very big population, and they're accessing the facilities, and they are paying a very small fee, which is actually being used to to maintain the system. So they are managing it themselves, and they're sustaining it because it's actually earning them some income, which is being used to maintain the system. Next slide, Juliana. All right, so the biggest lessons learned was, engaging members, engaging beneficiaries. If they are students, if the project is benefiting students at a school, I think it is important if you try to engage the students. For this particular project that we did, it was something unbelievable when actually these students, so our team members who were females, actually climbing to the rooftop to install the solar panels. That was something they had never imagined, that actually ladies could take up, such careers and have passion in such projects. In such little past, people still believe there are particular, careers which are reserved for a particular gender. So these youngsters actually seeing, ladies take up such, such careers and have passion in such and doing such kinds of work. The feedback was very amazing. You could hear them actually speak it out after seeing, our female teammates actually, doing these installations and, climbing on the rooftop and actively taking part, in this project. So one thing you have to again emphasize is, the element of sustainability must be prioritized. And I think no project can be, regarded as a success, if the beneficiaries cannot, sustain it, and use it for some good period of time. So I emphasize the element of sustainability. If the project leaders can prioritize that, I think that's something good for both the board, that the project they, considered for funding and invested in support, is actually still moving on 6-10 years after the installation of situation. And then I think that's all. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you much. Thanks so much, Elena.